Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we're back on the update dev server and it's time to have a look at the Strv 105. This vehicle is a new Centurion which is coming to the Swedish tree in the next major update. When it's coming in, it'll be rank 6 and at the moment battle rating 9.0, and you might think that's pretty high for a Centurion, but you'll see once you see some of the things that it has actually access to. What the Strv 105 was kind of a attempt in the 1990s for the Swedish to try and modernize the STRVs that they had. They obviously had the 104s at the time and also some other ones knocking about, and they were working out what to kind of do with their military. They even ended up testing a bunch of vehicles, including this Apache, which is now coming to the game for them as well. But the Strv 105 was a way to try and take some old technology and bring it into the modern era, while also trying to make it a bit more efficient and cheaper to do than buying new vehicles. Turns out it wasn't, so they decided to buy new vehicles in the form of the Strv 121s and then also the 122s, which you see right here, or basically the Leopards, and with different armor packages and different little changes to them. So the 105 differs from the 104, not really on its outset. If you just look at it basically, you know, it has the explosive ERA, the blazer on the front of it, which is very good against chemical but not very good against kinetic. It also has the same general armor. When it comes to the Centurion, it hasn't really changed too much, you know, so most things are gonna just chew through it when it comes to 9.0, especially if they're firing the meta rounds like APFSDS. So the armor can't really be, you know, relied on, but what it does do is basically with the gun. The gun itself, even though it's got all of this extra armor on the chassis, it still has an okay turret rotation speed, not the best but not the worst. The vertical is pretty good, and also it has great gun depression. The standard reload for the 105mm, the L7 that you find, this one specifically the Can Strv 101, and also it has the 4-man crew backing it up, meaning that, you know, you can make the reload better if you want to through crew skills, which is always nice for the vehicle itself. It also has some structural steel armor in the center. This is also there on the Israeli Centurions as well. And the engine is 900 horsepower for this 56-ton machine. So it's not going to be the quickest about. It's not going to be fantastic moving about, but it'll still have decent mobility backwards for a Centurion, and also its acceleration won't be too bad. You know, it won't be the best, but once again, won't be the worst. The main upgrades that the Strv 105 gets compared to its predecessors are pretty simple, and it's all down to what you fire and what you use in it. It doesn't have the commander controls, but what it does have is access to thermals for the gunner. So this thing has thermals, and it also gets an extra APFSDS round. This is the SLPPRJ M90C, or as you may know it, the DM63 round. Now this is actually present on a few other 105s in the game, but it is probably the best 105 gun, you know, round that's about the place. It pens 436, 368, 252. So at 9.0, this is going to be very deadly against anything that it faces. It also gets the standard M80 round, which I believe is the same one that you find on the 104 at 8.3. But at 8.3, you have to unlock it at rank 4, where you get the stock APDS, which can be a little bit of a pain. So the 105 gets a better round and also gets access to thermals. It also gets the laser rangefinder, gets the smoke grenades, and all of the other little bells and whistles of the 105. And that means that it's, you know, put up in BR quite steeply. But I think it's fair to do so, you know. The Centurion will be slightly worse in some areas compared to some of the other vehicles that it faces, but it's still a medium tank. It's still got a lot of nice features to it, including the fact that it has a nice turret, and including the fact that it has this mega round for the 9.0 BR, along with the laser rangefinder and the thermals to keep it in the fight. Another thing this finally does as well is it puts a tank at 9.0, therefore the CV90-105 can finally actually run at 9.0. Before we had the 9040B, which which was actually started its life at 8.3, I believe. Now it's at 9.3, at least on the dev server. So now the CV90-105 can finally start a lineup properly, which it hasn't had since its introduction as the CBT vehicle for the Swedish. It also can throw in some other things like the J29F or the J29D with its rockets with it as well. So overall, it's actually in a much better position than it used to be. And the CV90-105 is a fantastic vehicle. It works incredibly well. But because of having to forcibly up-tier it over and over again, you know, it might not feel as good as it generally is. Whereas now with the 105, there is a reason to actually use it at the BR that you find it at, which is really, really nice to see. So that's one of the niceties about this vehicle, starting the seeds, or sowing the seeds, sorry, for a new really interesting lineup around 9.0, when most of the lineups for these Swedish vehicles are actually at different BRs, such as 10.0 and also 8.3. The Swedish tech tree in general is a weird one. It's one which has some pretty strong lineups in it. It has a really good high tier in it as well, which is really fantastic and works incredibly well. And it has really weird BRs in the mid tiers, which mean that making lineups around them can be super rough. But it's nice to see that they're finally filling out the area between the like kind of 7.0 to 9.0 or 7.0 to 10.0 area, which was pretty barren before. So because it was barren, it pretty much meant once you got to those tiers, it was really hard to get through to get to the mega, you know, high tier lineup. And nowadays it's much better to do so. So you can see the general traverse of the vehicle is a bit rough unless you're pushing forward and around, and you know, the general mobility of this Centurion isn't going to be the best, but it has access to Gen 2 thermals. It has access to a fantastic round, which even, you know, even a person who struggles the most with being able to pen stuff, you know, is going to do well with. It also has the laser rangefinder, so you can do stuff like that and just pop people from miles away, and you can just do, you know, really well with the vehicle. It also has access to 2 smoke pops, which is super good. And the major limiting factor of it is the speed. If you're not on flat ground, it's going to struggle to move about. Even if you are on flat ground, you can see here it's taking us a while to get up to a mobile place. And if you compare it to other vehicles that are meta at 9.0, you know, stuff like the L44, even the XM1 at 9.3, even a lot of the other premiums that are around that area, you still don't have, you know, one of the key things they have is mobility, where you are struggling a little bit in this machine. So you're going to have to play this a lot more defensively than you would play a lot of other machines, so you won't be able to take the attack to the enemy, because you just won't get to the positions quick enough. You'll just end up just being in a situation where you'll just die before you get there. And another thing that also hasn't been improved is the optics when it comes to the general gun. They've improved the thermals, they've improved the round, but the optics is still rough for this. So even seeing stuff, you know, from miles away, if you don't have thermals or if you're trying to target specific areas of vehicles, it's just going to be a bit of a pain to be able to do so. Luckily, the DM63 doesn't care and will just pretty much go through everything as long as it isn't too badly angled or at a weird place. You can see that I'm shooting most of these things at really odd, awkward places, and it's just going straight through. The only one we had an issue with is the T54, but that thing's a menace. So you can see that we can do a ton of damage to a bunch of stuff around the place. And the reload's pretty good. The mobility is just not good, and the armor is just not good. So I think overall, with certain playstyles, this thing will be great. You know, it will work very well, and the Swedish tree, at least for me, has been a lot of fun, even with a few of the issues that it has when it comes to some of the lineups. I think it's definitely worth going through and experiencing a lot of the vehicles that the Swedes have access to. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Merciless Reaper, Jerry Provolt, Mega Dino King, Professor X1718, Orange Tail, Sakoshi Tiger, Teddy, John Ryman, Universe, Eugens Terry, Ambrosius McClellan, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, Moxie, B. Young, and Derek R., Barine, Lafouche, and Samuel Slick for supporting the channel.